All right, we are live.
We're live, so we're going to call the meeting to order. It's 10:30. It's the Strategic and Operational Planning Committee. We'll start with the presentations. So Charles, I'm going to give it over to you. We had Charles. Where did Charles go?
He's beeping in right now. We lost him, Dr. O.
Yeah, I saw he disappeared on the screen. There he is. Welcome back, Charles. You can start your presentation as soon as you're ready. He's here. Charles? There he is.
Okay. Yes, I just wanted to provide a quick update on where we are with the PTASP. I know we started the revisions a couple of months ago. We were almost at the end. And just to give you a follow-up on what we'll be presenting is where we are in the process. And the whole purpose of this was to provide updates as we finalize the actual revisions. And as I previously mentioned, the things that we were going to change was take SCORE out, remove the former CEO's name from out the document. There was 2 places where that was still listed. That would also force us to change the table of contents. We would need to add a board memo stipulating that the revisions have been adopted. Again, recognize that the interim CEO is now Valerie Ragland. One of the things that was also recommended was that we add names to the positions on the accountability table. Initially, we just had the positions, but now we're also going to add the names of the individuals that hold those positions. And I also created a table to illustrate that we disseminate our safety performance targets to GDOT as well as the MPC. We also changed the hazard mitigation to safety risk mitigation. That was a recommendation made by FTA. It's pretty much the same thing, but the wording is different. I also added our entire PTASP implementation plan embedded in the actual document. The other thing we're waiting on, there are 2 other things we're waiting on is legal clearance for us to change our recommended time frame for employment. I know one stipulated with drug and alcohol with the conviction, one was 3 years, and then with drug conviction, it was, I think, 7 years. And we made a recommendation that we should just, in order to be consistent, have a 5-year window for both offenses, with DUI and or the drug charges. And we're in the process of letting legal take a look at that. And Dr. Robinson also had a few grammatical and style recommendations for the plan. She's actively working on that now. As of yesterday, she had made revisions up to page 10. So we are going to wait on the conclusion of her recommendations. And that concludes my update on the actual PTASP. We also wanted to give the board an update on where we are with the hurricane plan. Of course, we're in the process of, well, we've already gotten the MOU signed again. The original MOU was signed with by the former CEO. We've recently gotten that done. With the Crossroads Community Church in Statesboro. I also confirmed with SEMA that right now there are no expectations for CAT to transport anyone out of town to any of the shelters. I know initially or at one point CAT did transport some, especially paratransit. But I've gotten confirmation from SEMA that that will not be the case in the event there is an evacuation this time. I know we've spoken about the buses and what I've done so we can have organized and orderly staging area in Statesboro. I've identified a coordinator for the site. He's already been on site to see exactly where the buses will be and what his expectations will be as the buses move from here in Savannah to Statesboro. So we'll have a concerted effort once we get there and some leadership presence in terms of what's going on the ground once the buses do arrive. We've also identified our representatives who will be in the SEMA command post in the event there is an evacuation. Those individuals can make some level of determinations and decision-making processes. More importantly, be in communications with the people operationally that they would need to be in touch with as SEMA makes requests. One of the things we also identified in the plan that needed to be revamped was the way we set up contingency expenditures. We've met, and one of the alternatives we came up with is an alternative payment process through perhaps Comdata. There's a credit card system that will allow us to make emergency purchases of like fuel and or repairs. So if a bus actually broke down in transit, we'll be able to get roadside assistance with that particular account. We're in the process of looking into that. We also met with transportation to see exactly how the operational needs would flesh themselves out in the event there was a mobilization. They have already started a volunteer board where operators have signed up to assist in the moving of the buses. We've had that discussion not only with the leadership of transportation, but with the union leadership as well, to make sure we're all on the same sheet of music. And that is going to be an organic process, and we're still working through that. And that's where we are with those particular updates in the plans. Both plans are extremely organic, but we want to make sure that the board was aware of where we are in the process of revising these documents. And that's all that I have. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I was just wondering, do we have anybody that would be there in a hurricane situation from CAT that would be able to offer advice and be kept up to date on what's happening? I know they meet in the bunker when something major happens. Do we have a representative there, or they do that just with their groups?
They do that with their policy groups, and they do keep the other individuals informed. I do reach out periodically myself personally to Seth Sawyer at SEMA to make sure there's an ongoing exchange of information. So in the event there are any changes or modifications to the plan, that we'll be apprised. And just in those types of conversations, we did learn that, for example, one small modification is that they don't disseminate reentry passes until there's actually a mobilization, or before they would just disseminate them prior to. But now they've allowed the dissemination to take place when we're closer to a mobilization, as opposed to just giving you the passes at the beginning of the year.
Didn't Terry used to go to the command center and stay?
I believe actually the two.
That's why I asked. I didn't remember.
It was actually one of the people. Jeffrey Swinton was one of the ones that has gone in the past, and he's already been identified. I'll be between the command center, CAT, and Statesboro, making sure all the operations are flowing as they should. But we've already identified a primary and a secondary person who will actually go to SEMA in the event there is a mobilization.
Okay, now, one of the things that we always had an issue with every hurricane is that we never found out which drivers were going to volunteer well in advance of the hurricane so that they could get their families evacuated without them having to say, I didn't know I had to work overtime, I need to move my family. So are we identifying those drivers like right now so they can make plans to get their families evacuated?
Yes, ma'am, we have done that. They have already begun signing up for the list. I've also, in addition to observing the list, in a newsletter, I identified those expectations of the drivers that will be going. So they'll know that if they take a bus, they may have to actually stay with the buses. They have to move their families well in advance, or they may have to go independent of their families. But those expectations have already been delineated in an actual newsletter. I've also shared those expectations with the union leadership. So not only
do you think it would be a good idea to have them sign off on these expectations? Because every hurricane, we get inundated with phone calls from drivers because they need to evacuate their families.
Yes.
And it always makes it seem like we didn't help them plan early enough. You know, do we need to give them an evacuation list, tell them how to get the people out? Like, what do we need to do so that this time, if something happens, the drivers don't feel panicked and we don't know what to do because they're calling us? So how do we do that?
I think, well, from what I understand from the meetings that I've been in, that has already been discussed with the leadership in transportation. I'm reinforcing that. And to your point, I'm also having conversations with the union. They just went through their negotiations. And once they conclude that, we're going to reconvene and see if there's an additional form that can be composed. In addition to that, as they come on board, they are identified as critical workforce, and they should have signed the form once upon getting hired. So that's where we are with that as well. But
Okay.
Yeah,
the redundancy would help.
and one of the other problems has always been that the evacuation orders don't come out until like 24 hours in advance. And,
Right.
you know.
Well, you know, they
unfortunately,
do.
the state does that, and FEMA and all the other groups. We don't really get to call that time. So
Right,
that's always going to
but
be a
we-
problem somewhat.
But Mike, we do know a couple of days in advance that they're going to call it. They just don't. So we can get from SEMA, like they know 5 days in advance that they're going to call an evacuation.
And
and
that's
they
when they have to
tell
let us
FEMA.
know, but they don't.
Yeah.
At least haven't in the past. I know
So
it happened
we need
the
to-
last time when Michael hit. We
Well, I
found
mean-
out like 30 hours in advance.
But there's a evacuation and then there's a mandatory evacuation, which
Right.
are different.
And if I may add to this, commissioners, thank you, Mr. Hall, for bringing that information. This is Dumas, by the way. One of the issues that it's been challenging for CAT to deal with, employees are aware, but it never stops the complaint that some of you get, is that we have to provide transportation from throughout the city to the civic center or
Right.
wherever the site location is to be evacuated. So many of the complaints come from that operator who is being told that they have to report to work and transport until SEMA makes that decision that we're no longer transporting to the civic center. Now those employees have the okay to now see about their family at the final end. That's something we are not able to stop that complaint because that employee has to report to work. They have to provide service to the civic center. And then once they get the all clear, then they're able to then leave and see about their family. What CAT tries to do and does do is to say that every employee, please make preparations for your family far in advance so that you perhaps are the only one that need to leave perhaps a day or two before or a few hours before impact. And so you'll get those complaints. There's not been a real workaround because we all have to report as critical employees. And so we have to perform that service.
And there's unfortunately, I mean, we see it every year. There's people who aren't leaving no matter what the disaster is. And it's always a late call. I mean, they track these storms for weeks and then everybody's sitting on the edge of the seat going, oh, should we call it, not call it, call it, not call it? It's going to cost all this money, you know, and I don't see it ever really changing. We can be as prepared as we want. But if they make it a 24-hour mandatory evacuation, there's no way we can control that. And we've done as best we could. I've been here for like 3 hurricanes already. And every year the same thing happens. It gets called late. We have, the drivers' families are still trapped at home. They may be the only driver for their families.
That's
You
correct.
know, they can't get them out of town if they're riding the buses through town, picking up everybody else's families. So it's a hard choice. And I don't think we can control it any better than we have. I wish there were a magic bullet that says, wow, this is how we're going to get it done and it'll never be a problem. But
Well,
I don't think we're there yet.
And the good part about the plan is that the church where we'll be staging the buses, will have accommodations for up to 80 people. The only deficiency that the site has is that it doesn't have any showers, but they will have meals throughout the time that we'll be there that will be provided with no charge. And they do have basic restrooms and some other amenities, but they can take their family with them while they're there waiting on the buses.
Oh, okay, that's good to know.
That's good.
Yep. The other question I had was on those, the combining the 3 and 7 year into 5 year. Is that something that has to be negotiated with the union, or is that CAT policy irregardless?
I think that that's something we can get passed through legal, and I think that will be before they actually get on board the hiring process. So I don't think the union will have that much say so in that part of it. And for the most part, I think it's more lenient. So it should benefit the members of the union because now they're having people having to wait 5 years instead of 7. And the logic behind that was that because a lot of the charges are dealing with marijuana, and marijuana is almost illegal now. So the stiffer penalties will not necessarily be necessary. So that's the position that we're taking on in terms of reducing it from 7 to 5.
Okay, but that's not part of the union contract.
No,
I have to double check. I don't think so though.
it's not.
Okay,
not.
because the one that we're upping is gonna probably ruffle some feathers in the union.
Yes. But it's not part of their MOA. It's not. But I just want to add too, before we leave this subject, that the SEMA has notified us that we will not be involved in transporting people as we might have done so in the past, but if we are called to do so, that then we will qualify for reimbursement.
And they're gonna give us 48 hours notice.
We hope,
No,
we hope so.
Yeah.
And also the discussions about that the credit card usage, that would be to eliminate the issuance of cash that has been done so in the past. We want to get away from issuing cash to operators who are traveling. So that's why there's a discussion about obtaining the credit cards.
okay. Yeah, we can always put limited values on,
Yes, sir.
almost like a gift card situation.
Mhm. Exactly.
Okay, next, I guess it's you, Val, for the proposed agenda items for the next meeting.
Yes, sir. Actually, Mr. Dumas is going to cover that first item with the extension of the COVID-19
Oh, okay.
emergency measures.
So good morning, directors. So the COVID extension, we just simply updated that. It will be an update where we extended it to where the CDC has extended that to January 18th of 2022. So we just simply made that extension to go through that time period as opposed to what would have ended in this particular month, September. They've extended it to January 18, 2022.
Yeah, that makes sense to really reapproving it every month. It hasn't changed since what, March of last year, pretty much.
That's correct. It hasn't changed. So do you still want that every month or do you
No,
want to change?
I think till the end of the federal proposal is fine. If
Unless,
that changes, we can always go back and or take it back, but I don't think we're gonna be out of it by January, so we got all the holidays coming up and that's when all the spikes seem to hit.
Mhm.
Sorry, I cut you off, Helen. What do you want to say?
no, I was just going to say that unless some policy change is implemented.
Yeah, because we only do it monthly. We can always say there's no changes, so let's continue till January.
Right.
You don't have to vote on it every time necessarily.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks, Davis.
I'll just go ahead and Dr. Rose, okay, just proceed.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm like half in the
But-
fog today.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the COVID-19. Does anybody hear the lawnmower going on in the background? Okay, he's
I
moving
know.
away from me. It was right under my
That has
window.
what?
I didn't know.
Oh,
Okay. The COVID-19 vaccine incentive program for employees. This was something that I've been sharing with you all in emails with the collaboration with the City of Savannah, Chatham County, and the Savannah Chatham County School Board. Yesterday, as you know, there was an announcement made about this collaboration. However, each entity is responsible for outlining their own guidelines for their employees. We are in the process of doing that, and as stated previously, legal is looking at the ramifications as well. We realize too that although the other partners are moving forward with their implementation, we will not make any action. We will not do anything until this has gone to the board officially during the board meeting on the 24th. But we want to make you aware that we have been contacted by the third party provider who will actually be doing the verifications for the vaccines. Chatham Area Transit or none of the other governmental entities will be dealing with that directly. The coastal care partners will be the third party that will be doing all verifications. Each entity has a website set up where the employee can go to it directly, enter information about themselves, and give them coastal care partners permission to verify their vaccination status. The agreed upon incentive was $500. The City of Savannah, I do believe, is grossing up their sums. Chatham County is not grossing up. Therefore, taxes will be applied to that sum. At Catch, we have not decided yet what will be done. We have not decided what the process would be. We're still receiving input from you as members of the board, as well as from legal before anything is done. Initially, the thought is to use the money that is in the reserve and apply for reimbursement for these funds through the federal government program. Because it is a COVID-related incident, it is reimbursable.
how are we
And that's-
classifying it as an incident?
Well-
It can't be an incident, can it? It has to be an event. Because an
Well, it's an
incident would be
initiative.
something happening.
Well, it's an initiative. So because it's COVID-related and affects the employees directly, we can seek reimbursement from the government.
Val,
We're
Yes.
positive about that.
Yes, ma'am. Director Stone?
yes, I picked up an email yesterday with the press conference. But the way it's written, it sounds like Cat's already doing this. And I know it hasn't gone before the board, but if you read that press release, it's acting like we're in line with the city and the county and that we're going to do the $500, even if, say, our board said, well, we want to do 300. So I just want you to know it's out there.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm
Yes.
concerned that we haven't talked to the lawyers enough, because this money would have to be classified as a bonus, which means it has to be taxed. So are we telling them that they're getting 500 total? Because we'd have to pay them more money for them to get 500. And if it's taxed, won't it be taxed at 48% as a bonus? So then they'd only be clearing like maybe 300. And then how are we implementing that? Like, I just think the lawyers have not given us enough input.
And I have contacted Andrew, and I am waiting for some information from them. Like, as I said, we have not made any steps toward implementation until we have spoken with legal, and they have given us the information that we need to
Well,
proceed.
I know, but it seems like we didn't go to legal soon enough, because they just got involved like a week ago. And that's problematic. Yesterday in the news conference, it
Mhm.
sounded like the mayor said this had been talked about since August 26th. That's like 2 weeks ago. If not, I don't think we've been talking about this for 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, I
And
initially-
and it came out, yes, and like Helen said, if you watched the press conference when the mayor announced it, and then the other one, it just sounds like it's all a done deal.
Yeah, but the email pretty much states it's a done deal. So it's in writing. I mean, we need to
That's
issue another
problematic.
press release saying that, we're waiting for affirmation from the board. Because it sounds like this is done.
And the other companies are putting out the same press release, including us in theirs. So
Yeah,
even if we didn't, it would still be out there that it's, it's done.
I know.
Did the commissioners
We
vote
should
on
have
that,
had-
Helen?
The commissioners have not voted on it.
So yours isn't official either.
Mm-mm.
We should have had a special call meeting or something. We should have done something.
well,
This is
the,
not right.
the
Well, it
city
seemed
didn't
like
have
it- Yeah,
the city.
it came out right after our board meeting, about a week or so after that. And I've contacted Andrew about whether or not we can mandate vaccines. Because we
I
are,
don't, yeah.
But that's not a mandate, that's an incentive.
right, but as a company with
Right.
what was signed, it's a company with 100+ employees, and we fit into that category. Plus, we are essential workers.
Yes, sir.
And,
the-
the state governors are going to fight it, particularly red state governors. So I don't know where that stands, and we may not know for a while whether or not we can even mandate with 100+ employees.
And I'm really concerned about the tax issues. I'm really concerned about the tax implications.
Well, we're
Because
also
are we
going to
gonna
have
pay?
to match them.
Are we? Yeah, are we paying that? Because how much is that in addition to the 150? And is the taxable amount that's paid reimbursable? I don't think so. Stephanie,
You muted.
unmute
Stephanie.
yourself, please.
Those are all very good questions. And I can assure you that all of this came up as the staff sat around the table. Once the draft of the press release was sent out, I do know that Mrs. Ragland did ask for the removal of the amount of money from the press release, because as you said, it had not gone before the board. Nothing had been approved by the board. That was done, and assuming the decision was made to not pull the amount out of the press release, but that request was made. We are still around the table outlining or working towards some procedures to bring to the board before anything is done after we get advisement from legal.
Okay, because I'm also concerned about whether or not we're going to need a release signed for us to get verification of their vaccination status. I don't think we can do that without a release because of HIPAA. So they're going to have to release that information to us before they can give it to us so that we're legally compliant. Won't we have to be, Stephanie?
Well, we are, the plan is to piggyback off of a contract that the county already has with this company. I've asked the procurement manager to reach out to see what that contract looks like for us to have a discussion with legal as to whether or not it's okay to move forward, pending bringing it before the board for approval.
And
Yeah,
third party,
I-
the Coastal Care Partners, when they go onto the site, they have to grant permission, yes or no. So that in itself qualifies as a release for them to, they ask questions specifically that, are you giving us permission to verify your vaccination? That's the release.
The thing that kind of is bothersome at this point is that this has been put out to the public
Mhm.
and none of the groups have even voted to approve it.
Yeah.
Our board hasn't. Helen said the commissioners haven't. I don't know if the school board did or whether the city of Savannah did. And if
Well,
it's
the city
Chatham
of
County,
Savannah-
does that extend to Pooler and all the other communities? Are they being brought into this? Because Chatham County incorporates more than the city of Savannah.
Well,
I think there's a huge legal problem here that hasn't been answered, and I think we're gonna have to wait for that. Because there's other communities involved in Chatham County. If Chatham County employees have to get it, what about Pooler? You know, are they they're picking us out as the other group that needs to be involved, yet the Pooler police aren't involved, Bloomingdale police aren't involved, none of the other organizations are involved but us. And they all have much bigger budgets than we do for this kind of stuff. We don't have the taxing ability. So we're gonna have to take money out, which we know will never go back into that account.
Mhm.
Because there's always gonna be something else coming up that's gonna require us to keep taking the money and putting it somewhere else. And without the mandate, are we jeopardizing our FTA funding?
And another concern I have is what about the employees that went ahead and did it? And then by not waiting, they gypped themselves out of $500.
Well, I think they were including them, Helen, and
Yes.
I would insist
Well,
that it be that way.
Yes.
Okay,
I wouldn't
well,
mind
They are
incentivizing
included.
them for already having gotten it
They-
rather
yes,
than
they-
those who didn't.
Yes.
okay, but I mean, that has not been clearly addressed either.
But they
Yeah,
have,
we've
they
got
are
a lot to
included.
work out on this.
Yeah,
Those-
And if the federal mandate goes in and while it's in the courts, I think we're stuck with a lot of this. Because it's already been signed as an executive order.
Mhm.
I don't know when the effective date is or who it's going to involve. I know they put it on all federal employees, the military, a lot of other groups. So we'll have to see where that goes.
And from my understanding, that the executive order probably won't go into effect at least for 75 days. And then, of course, there's going to be challenges to it, so it will be tied up in court.
Yes, it will. Who knows, by then we may be out of the COVID crisis. Doubtfully. What's our vaccine rate right now? Still in the low 30s?
No, we're about 40%.
And we've already had an outbreak in the building.
Yes, sir.
And how bad is the call out rate?
It continues to climb. We are still having issues with operators on the fixed route side as well as the paratransit side. Every day, call outs.
And we're being held hostage as far as I can see. We were good during the first 3 or 4 months. We paid everybody to not work, and now it's just every other day something else is coming up that's going to cost us more money. All right, I think we've beaten that horse to death by now. Let's move on to the next item, the presentation of home purchase program.
Yes, this is a presentation. I was approached by the City of Savannah's Housing Department, and Anita Dixon Smith from that department will do a brief presentation to the board showing some advantages to supporting an employee home purchase program where Chatham Area Transit could contribute a monetary amount every year that will go towards the down payment of those who qualify. It could be as small as $1,000. I think St. Joseph Candler, they do $1,500 a year toward the down payment assistance for their employees through this program. So she wanted to do a brief demonstration, presentation to the board about this program to kind of gauge your interest for implementing it for the employees of Chatham Area Transit. And that's it.
We'll see what the presentation's like. I don't see where it fully benefits CADIT in any particular way. We don't offer a retirement system, so I would rather see that than, because what about the people who already own homes? You know, we're discriminating against the people who are stable with home ownership. So I'm not, we'll have to really hear about this one.
Yes,
I'm sure it helps the city of Savannah because they want the properties that they're maintaining
Mhm.
purchased so they don't have to continue doing it and it becomes taxable for them. Doesn't become taxable for Cat.
well, it'll be a brief demonstration. It's just a presentation to see if you might be interested as an additional benefit to employees who might qualify. And that
Yeah, we'll have-
concludes.
We'll have to see where we are because right now I'm sure the overtime budget's tearing us apart as far as keeping up with where we are. And this is going to be for another 4 months. And if there's going to constantly be sick outs, our best move is to mandate the vaccine so we don't have that problem. We have to worry about the health of the employees first and foremost. And we also have to worry about the financial health of the company.
And that is
because-
something that our legal team is looking at, the possibility of mandating or requiring weekly testing.
Yep, I asked Andrew about that last week when this first started to come out, and he was looking into it for us.
Yes, sir.
Any old business? I know we're tentatively canceled the retreat. Supposedly, we're scheduling it for early in October. I'm hoping we can do it before the next set of committees meet because I don't think any of the committees are doing anything actively right now because not only are the structures going to be changed, the people on the committees are going to change. And if you get put on a committee you're not on now, you're going to have to start over again. So I don't see the board members jumping on doing all sorts of their own time work on these projects that we're looking at. And I think we have to see where we are budget wise. I know Stephanie's keeping good track on it, but these things are going to catch up, especially when payroll and benefits is 70% of our costs. So everything that we put into that is going to have to be taken out of somewhere else.
Mhm.
All right. Next, we have our next meeting next Tuesday at 11 is governance. And on the 24th, we have the board meeting at 10 a.m. I'm assuming we're all going to be virtual for now. Any other questions while we're on?
No, sir.
All right. If there's nothing else, I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 11:04.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Y'all have